everybody. Today we're going to be discussing uh, our first form of user input. Now there are two ways to deal with user input, and we'll go over one of them here. At this point, we pretty much made programs that could, store information, uh, you know, give us answers to math problems, or just simply display stuff on the screen. Nothing big there, right? But every time we run the program, it's going to do exactly the same thing. There's going to be absolutely no difference. You'd have to go into the code, change the code to make it do anything different. Now with user input, you can ask the user a question, ask them for some information, for some numbers, and that can change how the program's going to run. Every time, it runs, I can type something different and get a different result. Now the two different kinds of user input we have, one, we can use the scanner, or two, we can use the J option pane, which we saw in the previous one. I tend to use the scanner more, simply because it is a little bit easier. It does have some drawbacks, but the J option pane is nice if you want to type everything into pop-up boxes and whatnot. So let's first talk about the scanner. Uh, I'm just going to make a quick project here. And again, put whatever date you want. I, again, find that helps pretty much. Intro scanner is what I'll call it. And make sure it's saved in the right place, all that stuff. Hopefully by now that should be pretty much second nature. Now, make a few spots, and we're ready to go. Now, in order to use the scanner, I'm going to have to import something first. The same would be true for the G option pane too. The program does not automatically know what the scanner is. There's basically two steps to getting started, and you pretty much have to do the same thing every single time you want to use the scanner. In fact, it's pretty much just copy and paste. First, I import, so I can use it so my program knows what it is. That's the import line. And it's going to be exactly the same in every single program. Now it's yellow because I haven't used it yet. Inside the main, you have to name and declare the scanner. So scanner input equals new. There. And those two lines are, again, pretty much exactly the same. Now input is the name. It can really be anything, Keyboard. Type. I tend to prefer input because that's just how all the books labeled it whenever I was doing it years ago. So I call it input. Now scanner is the thing we're going to be making, and you can basically think of it like a typewriter. We're creating a little typewriter or a little box to funnel our typing through. Input's the name, so whenever I want to use it, I'm going to say input. New scanner is just telling it to create a scanner. And the system.in, that's the keyboard. And of course that could change to other things, but for us, it'll be exactly like this. If you want to use the scanner in any other program, you can just copy paste these two steps and then you're pretty much ready to go. Now, first, I typically have to have a little message here. Ask the user to type something in, for example. Type in your name. Or type in your age. One of those things. But let's go with string name equals input. Now input is what I call this thing. And I'm going to say dot next line. Now next line takes the next string, basically, however long you want to type it. So if I type in, 1,000 words without pressing enter, it's going to be 1,000 words long. If I type in, a couple of words, it'll save those couple of words into this. I'll print a little message. Hello plus name. And we'll see real quick. Type in your name. Bob. Then it repeats hello Bob, right? So this is if I want to take in a string. Now if I use this and I type in a number, 5, that's perfectly fine because 5 is it's a string. But the problem is 5 that it's taking in is this with quotes. That's not a number you can do math on. So if I wanted to actually do some math on it, I can't use next line. Now if I want to take in an integer, for example, type in a number. Int number equals input.next int. Now there's a lot of little things here. If I hit the dot, you'll see next int, next short, next byte. Oh, nope. There we go. We have a couple things here. Has next, next big integer, which I've never actually used before. Next double, next float, next long. Pretty much we can just tell it specifically what we want to type in. I want to type in the next int. Dot next int. There we go. The number is plus number. So I type in Bubba Hotep, number 1009, and it repeats the number to me. Now, the problem with this, it's fairly easy to use, but let's say I type in Bob, and then I type in Bob again. Remember we talked about runtime errors, right? Java input mismatch exception. It means basically this line here crashed. In fact, you'll actually see, if I scroll down the bottom, it says right here, line 24. And guess what line this is? 24. So it actually tells you specifically where that crashed. I typed in Bob and tried to put a string into an int. You can't do that. Now, if I was doing a double, I could type in an int, I could type in a double, but I can't type in a string for that either. So this is for ints. If I wanted a double, it would be pretty much the same thing. Except it would be double. I'll call it d number equals input.next double. And the double is plus d number. So if I take a quick look at this is just to show you the difference here. Let's see here. Number. Type in a number. Let's say I type in 93.4567. It'll repeat that because that's a double. Let's say I type in 90. I'll get 90.0. And the reason for that is an int can be plugged into this, but it's going to become a double. And a double means that it has this little decimal point here. So that's perfectly fine. This is most of what you're going to be using for doubles. Now, I could use, instead of next line, I could use input.next for the next word, which means if I typed in Bubba Hotep like I did before, it would just get Bubba. And the ho and the tep would still be kind of there waiting. So next lines for the next string, ints, integer, doubles, doubles. And they have to match, at least as closely as you can. For a string, you can type anything you want. For the ints and the doubles, they have to be ints, doubles for those two. If you type in a string or something else, it'll crash. Now, there are ways to fix that to make sure it doesn't crash, but that'll be something we discuss later once we get to conditional statements, if statements, and that sort of thing. We can actually have it check to make sure that the person isn't typing in something stupid. Typically, whenever you're writing a program, you kind of want to always assume that the person using it is a complete moron. They have no idea what they're doing. Uh, and that's kind of how you want to approach things. Don't assume they know what you're doing. There was a good story I read. This guy who designed this interface for this video game, and he thought it was really intuitive. When he was designing it, he building it, he started play testing the game, and it worked great. He loved it, and then he gave it to the testers, the QA, quality assurance. These are folks that basically play the games and write down bugs and tell people what they think about it. Now, before you get too excited, though, yes, there is a job where you can basically play games for a living, but it's not like you can play whatever game you want. You may have to play games you don't even care about. Instead of playing, your favorite sports game or your favorite fighting RPG, whatever, you may end up playing Barbie Funtime Adventure. And you're not playing completed games, by the way. You're playing broken, barely working games usually. So you'll get to an area and the whole thing, you know, like half the characters turn inside out or fly off the screen for no reason, and then you have to replicate that like 10 times. Write the bug report, send it to the programmers, and they fix it. So it's not a super exciting job. It just depends. Some people get lucky with it, others not. Now, and we'll talk more about how to fix those sorts of things. Maybe not, characters turning inside out, but at least stopping this from crashing later. So for now, we're going to assume that the people typing things in are not idiots. They'll type in the right things. Once we get a few more little programming bits and pieces under our belt, then we can start, you know, making sure they do what they're supposed to do. Putting in little checks and make sure that they don't break things. Now, we could also take in other things, but these are most of the things that you're typically going to type in. Strings, doubles, integers. You could also take floats, and that would be next float, as you saw earlier. Input.next. And you'll see the whole list here, like so. But these are the ones that you're typically going to be using the most, and some of the issues that may come with them. Now, with this, we can type in things. I can do math or display things, and the program can be a little different every single time I run it now. So that's scanners. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. You can message me, leave comments, whatever you need.